CreepyCorner stories.
Hey everyone, welcome back to CreepyCorner stories. You know, diving into the dark web is always risky, but sharing these stories with you makes it worth it. I'm curious, where are you watching this from right now? Let me know in the comments below. I've noticed that these kinds of stories hit differently depending on where you are. It might even make the experience a little creepier. So, tell me, are you watching from the safety of your home or somewhere less secure? I am a dark web photographer. I just witnessed Bill's father getting eaten alive on the Kill Me Marry wedding. Alright, so this is not the type of thing I ever thought I'd be putting out there. Definitely not on Reddit, and definitely not under my real name. So yeah, throwaway account, obviously. I'm not stupid. I used to do freelance photography, mostly weddings, birthdays, travel gigs. You know the vibe. Someone wants their proposal at the Eiffel Tower documented, or a rich dude wants his Instagram to look like he's on an endless vacation. I was your guy. But about a year ago, my work started to dry up. AI filters, everyone having a phone camera, and honestly, people just didn't value quality photography anymore unless you had 10,000 on Instagram and shot for influencers. So, in desperation, I started exploring less traditional jobs. I'd heard about people making money doing gigs for clients on the deep web. At first, I thought it was all myths, urban legends, creepypasta tier nonsense, but the money looked real. The gigs? Weird, but not illegal, at least not directly. Photograph a doll in an abandoned warehouse. Take pictures of strangers from a distance. Deliver a USB to a Starbucks in Berlin with no questions asked. Weird stuff, but high pay. Easy enough, right? I started going by Obscura Ghost on the boards. I used encrypted VPNs, ran everything through Tor, double-checked everything. The usual stuff you do when you're dipping your toe into the internet's basement. Anyway, last month, I got contacted by a user named Honeymoon Hearts. That name alone gave me the chills. Their profile picture was a low-res image of a wedding cake, but like with a human eye in it. I didn't even know how to feel about that. Creepy, obviously, but I had bills to pay. They messaged me this: "We need a discreet eye to capture the sacred night. A ceremony of blood and bond. You will be paid double your usual rate. Come alone. No questions. No flash photography. You are not a guest." I wish I'd said no. I really do. They sent me coordinates that, when I plugged into Google Maps, landed me somewhere just outside of a forested area near Rothenburg ob der Tauber in Germany. Beautiful town. Very medieval. Not the kind of place you'd expect a horror show to go down in. The message said the event would take place in a private cathedral deep in the trees. I flew out there a week later. Everything was paid for in advance. Flight, hotel, even an Uber that picked me up at the Munich airport and dropped me off near the forest trail. There were no street signs, no reception, just trees and fog. I felt like I was in a bad Blair Witch remake. I had this Canon EOS R6 camera, night vision lens, fully charged. I had backup batteries, extra SD cards, and a body cam on my chest, just in case. And yeah, I backed up everything to the cloud because I knew something was off. Always trust your gut, right? After about 45 minutes of walking through the forest, I started hearing music. Soft violin at first, but off-key, like the kind of thing you'd hear in a haunted Disney ride that was abandoned halfway through development. There were lanterns hanging from the trees, old school ones, like from the 1800s. They glowed green. I swear to God, green. I finally reached a clearing, and there it was, a twisted-looking cathedral, Gothic, crumbling but still standing. No crosses, no stained glass, just this weird bone-white color and spirals etched into the stone that didn't look human. I don't know how to explain it. The designs moved when I wasn't looking at them directly. I thought I was hallucinating. At the front, there was this huge red velvet banner with golden letters stitched into it. It read, "Kill me, marry, till death do us feast." I thought it was some edgy art collective, like one of those weird performance groups that try to go viral on TikTok, or some underground YouTube scare channel. But this wasn't for show. This was real. Inside, there were people, maybe 30 or 40, all wearing wedding attire, suits, gowns, but every single one of them had masks on, not like masquerade ball stuff. I'm talking handmade, stitched together skin masks, porcelain painted over cracked bone. One guy's mask looked like a clown's smile had been surgically implanted over his jaw. Another had a bride's veil soaked in something dark and crusted. Nobody talked. They all stared at me as I walked in, but not in an aggressive way. More like I was the entertainment, or maybe the meal. Then he walked in. Bill, my old college roommate. Yeah, that Bill. The same dude who dropped out sophomore year because of visions and started posting conspiracy threads on Twitter about how Apple Watches were receivers for government thought patterns. I hadn't seen him in 6 years. He was wearing a tux, but it looked aged, like it had been buried and dug back up. His skin was pale, his eyes were wide, and his lips were stitched shut. Except one of the stitches had ripped, and his mouth was twitching like he wanted to scream but couldn't. And right behind him was his dad, Mr. Weatherford, a normal, boring-ass suburban dad. Used to mow the lawn at 6 a.m. and yell at raccoons for tipping over the trash cans. But now, he was in a white priest's robe, barefoot and shaking, absolutely trembling. That's when the bride came in. I'm still shaking writing this. She was 8 feet tall, minimum. Her dress was made of wedding veils stitched together, but it dragged behind her like a train of ash. Her face was covered by a porcelain doll mask, cracked on one side. Her eyes, they weren't human, no pupils, just black, reflective holes. And her hands, long, too long, thin, like the bones were too stretched out for the skin to handle. Then the ceremony began. I kept snapping photos, hands trembling. No one told me to stop. No one even looked at me. It was like I didn't exist. The bride and Mr. Weatherford stood at the altar. Bill was shaking behind them. One of the masked guests stepped forward and began speaking in this guttural language I didn't recognize. Not Latin. Not any language I've ever heard. It sounded like choking and crying mixed with static. Then she bit his shoulder, like tore into it. Her teeth went straight through the robe and into the flesh, and everyone started clapping slowly, rhythmic, controlled, like it was part of the ceremony. He didn't scream. That was the worst part. He just looked at Bill. Bill, whose eyes were pouring tears, even though he didn't make a sound. And then they brought out the knives. I don't even know how to describe what I saw next without feeling like I'm dragging you into it. It's one of those moments where your brain wants to check out, like it's giving you a free pass to dissociate, pretend it's not real. but every single second of it felt real. Too real. The smell, the heat, the sounds, especially the sounds. I can't scrub them out of my head. The moment the bride bit into Mr. Weatherford, the entire room shifted. I don't mean in an emotional way. I mean the walls physically breathed, like the cathedral had lungs. I swear to God, I watched a stone around me pulse, like it was alive. The air got thicker, heavy, metallic. You could taste it, iron and rot and wet dirt. The masked guests began humming. Not a song, not anything you'd recognize. Just this vibrating, droning hum that settled into your bones, like something you were born to hear, but weren't supposed to. One of them walked over to the altar carrying a glass case. Inside it, a wedding contract, but not on paper. It was written on skin, human skin. You could see the pores. The ink looked black until the candlelight caught it. Then it shimmered a deep, blood-red purple, like something you'd see leaking from roadkill. At the bottom of the contract was a space for 3 fingerprints. And then I realized what was happening. This wasn't a wedding. It was a sacrifice ritual. And the bride was not marrying a man. She was marrying a legacy. That's when I saw Bill step forward. His eyes were wide open, mouth twitching behind those split stitches. He looked hollow, like whatever was inside him had left years ago, and only the outer shell remained, on autopilot. He held out his hand. His fingers were already bleeding. 3 drops. He let them fall into the contract. Then Mr. Weatherford, shaking, sobbing without sound, stepped forward too. They didn't even cut him. The moment he touched the glass case, the flesh of his palm bubbled and split, like the glass itself was melting his skin off. His blood oozed down onto the parchment. The 3rd fingerprint? The bride placed her hand over the others. Her fingernails dug through the case, like it wasn't even solid. And that's when it really started. The humming stopped. Total silence. Everyone turned to face the altar. The air went still. Too still. Like sound had been vacuumed out of the room. I couldn't even hear my own breathing anymore. My heartbeat, muffled. My own body was quiet, like it was afraid to make a sound. The bride raised her arms, and the ceiling cracked open, not metaphorically. The actual cathedral ceiling split, like a dry wound tearing. Dust rained down, but what came through that hole, I will never forget. It wasn't a creature, it was a mass, like flesh and hair and teeth stitched together with barbed wire. Its arms were human, but too many. Not in a Lovecraftian horror way, in a these are real severed limbs twisted into something else kind of way. Some had watches still on them, bracelets. One had a best dad tattoo, and the face. Jesus Christ, the face. It looked like Bill's mother. I'd only met her once in college, during a Thanksgiving break we spent at his house. But I remembered her face. Warm, smiling, kind eyes. Except this version had 8 eyes, stretched too far apart. Her mouth was stitched shut with shoelaces. The thing floated down, if you can even call it floating, and hovered above Mr. Weatherford. And then, without a single word spoken, the bride reached into her chest and pulled out what looked like a blackened, shriveled heart. She fed it to the thing, and it smiled. It smiled with his mother's face. That was when Mr. Weatherford started convulsing. No one moved. No one helped. He fell to his knees. His eyes rolled back, mouth wide open, but there was no sound. Instead of blood, this thick, black foam started coming out of his nose and ears. His tongue swelled up like a sponge. He looked at Bill, locked eyes with him, and then he split, from the top of his skull down to his sternum, like an overripe fruit. Flesh peeled open with a wet snap, and something crawled out of him. It looked like a child, a wedding child, dressed in a miniature tuxedo, its face exactly like Bill's, but younger, too smooth, eyes completely white, no pupils, and smiling. The kind of smile that knows things you don't. It held a ring in its hand. The bride took it, slid it onto her finger, and the guests began clapping. But this time, it sounded like bones breaking. Every clap echoed like a snap. Someone's fingers were literally snapping off from how hard they were clapping, but they didn't stop. They just kept clapping through the pain. Then the screaming started, but not from Mr. Weatherford. He was gone. His skin was crumpled on the floor like a Halloween costume. The screaming came from the walls, whispering, high-pitched wails like trapped souls trying to claw their way out of the cathedral itself. And then I made my mistake. I took a photo. It was instinctual, reflex, just click. The bride turned her head toward me, and everything stopped. The guests, the floating abomination, even the walls went still. She began walking toward me, slowly, her head tilted with every step, like she was analyzing me. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't move. My legs felt like they were welded to the ground. She reached out. Her hand hovered inches from my face, and then she said the first and only thing I've ever heard her say. "You are the witness now. The next altar needs eyes." She touched my forehead. I blacked out. I woke up alone, in the woods, just outside the cathedral. My camera was gone. My body cam, still strapped to me, but all the footage was corrupted. Just static, except for 1 second. A single frame of the bride's face, smiling. My phone was blowing up. 38 missed calls from a blocked number. The hotel had no record of me ever checking in. My Uber history, erased. The only evidence I have is a burn on my forehead. A mark. Looks like a wedding ring imprinted into my skin. Since I've been back, I've been seeing things. At Starbucks, someone in line ahead of me turned around, and their eyes were pure white. On the subway, I watched a woman take off her glove, and her fingers were stitched together with twine. I got an anonymous email 2 days ago. No subject, just an attachment. A photo. It's me, standing in the cathedral. But I never took that picture, and I'm not holding a camera. I'm holding a knife. Let me start by saying, nothing in your life prepares you for this kind of madness. It doesn't matter how many horror movies you've watched, how many Reddit creepypastas you've read, or how many times you think, it's just a dream, it's just a story. No amount of imagination matches what I've seen since I left that forest, since I watched Bill's father get torn open like a gift box, and something unnatural crawl out of his ribcage, smiling like it belonged here. And I need you to understand something before I continue. I didn't leave that wedding. Not really. I woke up somewhere else, sure, physically, but mentally, emotionally, that altar left a piece of itself in my head. I felt it growing every day since. Something whispering, something hungry. It's not a metaphor. I'm not being poetic. I mean it literally. It talks to me now. Let's pick up where I left off. After I came back from Germany, I thought I was safe. I moved out of my apartment in Chicago, destroyed all my gear, deleted every dark web client I had, burned the hard drives, changed phones, even cut off old contacts who might have known I'd been working on those deep gigs. But they still found me. They always do. It started with a live stream notification. Yeah, a live stream. It popped up in the middle of the night, while I was doom scrolling Instagram in bed. It wasn't from anyone I followed. It was titled The Honeymoon Feed, featuring the witness. I clicked it. God help me, I clicked it. It launched in full screen. No comments, no hearts, no UI, just the feed. The camera was inside a cold, dimly lit room. Looked like a honeymoon suite at a cheap roadside motel. Peeling floral wallpaper, stained sheets, and the kind of lamp you see flickering in a nightmare. Except there was something off about the scale. The walls were too tall. The ceiling curved inward. It almost felt like we were inside a rib cage. And then I saw the bed. There was something lying on it, something twitching. It was a body, but not dead, not yet. It was restrained, duct tape wrapping from shoulder to ankle, and the head had been wrapped in lace, like a wedding veil made of hair, human hair, wet, matted, and then a familiar voice. Bill's, but not the Bill I knew. His voice was strangled, distant, like it was coming through 100 layers of static and regret. This is her gift. She wants you to see the beginning, witness. I watched as a figure entered the frame. Tall, female, the bride. Same cracked porcelain mask, but now she wore a nightgown soaked in something dark. Not blood, worse, something thicker, sludgier. Her hands gleamed. Oiled? Number. It was mucus. She climbed onto the bed. The body started thrashing. You could hear the muffled sobs underneath the veil. The bride reached out and began tracing symbols onto the victim's chest with her fingers. The skin burned open with each stroke. No blade, no heat, just touch. The flesh split like paper, revealing bone, muscle, twitching organs. No one screamed. Not the victim, not the bride, not even me. Because at that moment, I realized something terrifying. I could feel it. Every cut, every stroke, inside my own body. It was like being spiritually connected through a live stream. Like my nerves were hijacked. I could feel veins unraveling, tendons stretching, my chest opening in sync with the victim. I slammed the laptop shut and threw it across the room. Still felt the pain, still tasted iron in my mouth. The next day, I started getting packages, unmarked, no return address. Inside the first one, a wedding ring, black, carved with tiny scratches that, when I looked closely, formed words, like a microscopic engraving. I had to use my phone's zoom to read it. She is already inside you. Second package, a blood-soaked Bible with every single page cut into a spiral, like someone shredded it into a vortex of verses. On the last page was a Polaroid photo. Me, standing outside my building, taken that morning. I moved again. Didn't matter. Third package came 2 days later. Inside, a USB drive, wrapped in what looked like dried skin. I almost threw it out, but I couldn't. Something in me needed to know. I opened the files. Only one folder. Wedding guests. Inside were hundreds of images, headshots, faces, names, ages, locations. Each one was labeled with either marry or kill. I recognized some of them. A famous Twitch streamer, a high-profile TikTok beauty guru, even a dude I used to work weddings with. Andrew, my second shooter from 3 years back. His photo was labeled marry, a wedding ceremony in Nevada, and mine, kill, honeymoon witness, do not touch until altar 2. There was one more file, a video. It opened with footage of a McDonald's in Florida, regular place, families eating, kids running around, until the camera zoomed in on a man sitting alone by the window, sipping a soda. I didn't recognize him at first, but then he looked up. His face had no eyes, just empty sockets stitched shut. The bride walked in. No one reacted. No one even looked at her, like they couldn't see her. She walked up to the man, kissed his forehead, and he began to dissolve, skin sloughing off his bones like wet paper, and the customers just kept eating. One girl was licking an ice cream cone as the man's jaw fell into his tray, and then, for half a second, the camera glitched and switched to me, sitting in a motel room, asleep. The feed ended. That night, I woke up to her in my room. The bride. I couldn't move. Sleep paralysis. That's what you want to believe. But it wasn't like any sleep paralysis I've ever had. She leaned over me. Her breath sounded like 1,000 people whispering through a fan. Her face hovered inches from mine. She whispered, "The ceremony is incomplete. You must carry the feast to America." Then she crawled backward into the wall, limbs cracking in reverse, like a spider caught in rewind. She melted into the dry wall, leaving a faint, pulsing handprint that hasn't disappeared since. And now they've started following me. I've seen the guests. They're everywhere. One sat across from me on the subway, reading a wedding magazine with pages made of teeth. Another was behind me at Walmart, tapping a severed finger against their cart like a drumstick. I got a DM yesterday on Instagram from a new account. No posts, just a message. Ready to shoot part 2. The groom is missing. We think he's in Los Angeles now. Time to finish what you started. Attached was a photo of Bill, standing outside a Starbucks in Venice Beach, smiling, with a bride tattoo burned into his forehead. I didn't sleep for 3 days after seeing that photo of Bill outside the Venice Beach Starbucks. The tattoo burned into his forehead. The word bride, raw and swollen, like it had been carved there with a branding iron dipped in bile. His smile wasn't real, not even close. It looked like a muscle spasm stretched across a dead man's face. They wanted me back, not as a guest, not even as a witness. They wanted me as something worse. The first sign that they had followed me to America came that same night. I was crashing in a run-down motel just outside Santa Monica, one of those places where the no vacancy sign flickers even when the parking lot's half empty and the walls smell like bleach, barely masking rot. 3:09 a.m. I remember the exact time because I woke up to a wedding march, ringtone playing from my phone. I didn't have one. I destroyed my previous phone days ago. This was a burner, brand new, untouched, never synced, not logged into anything, yet the screen glowed with a FaceTime call from a contact labeled "Groom Prep Room, answer in silence." The screen showed nothing at first, just darkness and muffled sounds. Then, flickering candlelight, a room, no windows, red curtains like stretched skin, dozens of mannequins, all dressed in burnt wedding gowns and suits, but their heads were real, human heads, sewn onto plastic necks. Their eyes blinked. In the center of the room was a groom's chair, a carved wooden throne with belts where the armrest should be. Blood soaked into the seat like a sponge, dripping onto a mirror floor. Then the camera turned, just slightly, and showed Bill, tied down, eyes forced open with hooks, jaw cranked open like a taxidermy deer. There were surgical markings across his cheeks, tracing lines as if his face was about to be peeled off like a mask. But it was his eyes. His eyes were moving, twitching, screaming. They were still in there. And behind him, the bride. She wasn't wearing her veil anymore. Now it was a crown, a twisted halo made of teeth and fingers, all still twitching. She was humming something that didn't sound like music. It sounded like a woman choking underwater, rhythmic, bubbling, hypnotic. Her hands were covered in rings, all different sizes, all still wet. Some had fingernails stuck inside them. She lifted a knife. The blade wasn't metal. It was a human spine, sharpened to a point. She whispered into the camera, "The groom has come home. Bring the witness, or take his place." The screen went black. When I blinked, I realized my motel room wasn't the same anymore. The window was gone. The mirror in the bathroom now showed two of me, one blinking out of sync with the other. On the bed beside me was a bouquet of black flowers wrapped in someone's scalp. At the center of the bouquet was a single Polaroid photo of my mother. She was asleep, but behind her bed stood the bride, holding a wedding cake knife. I left the motel within 5 minutes. Didn't check out, didn't pack. I walked for miles, shaking. Every shadow twitched. Every reflection smiled. I walked until I hit the city center, downtown LA, where no one sleeps, and everyone's too busy to notice a man having a breakdown on the sidewalk. And that's when I saw the van. White, unmarked, parked half a block from an abandoned church near Skid Row. I was walking past it when the side door slid open. Inside was Andrew, my old second shooter, the same guy from the USB file labeled MARRY, Nevada. His skin was tight, too tight, like it had been stretched over someone else's skull. His eyes didn't blink. His jaw moved, but his words didn't come from his mouth. They came from a speaker implanted in his throat. "The altar is here. You were chosen. You were always chosen." He stepped out of the van. I ran. Didn't look back. Found an underground rave happening in some busted theater down the block and blended in. I know how that sounds, running from death into a rave. But I needed bodies, people, noise, something alive. But even there, they found me. The DJ's visuals were glitched, flickering images of brides walking down a reversed aisle, dragging grooms by the jaw. One of the dancers was wearing a veil. She smiled at me, and I swear to God, her teeth were filed down to the gums. I tried to hide in the bathroom. Inside the stall was a man sitting in the toilet tank, folded, bent, limbs snapped at the joints to fit. His face had been replaced with a mirror. When I looked at it, it showed me standing at the altar, wearing a tuxedo, holding the bride's hand, and everyone in the room was clapping with knives instead of hands. I blacked out. When I woke up, I was in an Uber. The driver didn't speak. His mouth was sewn shut with hair. He dropped me off in front of a massive wedding venue in the Hollywood Hills. I recognized the place from celebrity gossip sites. Some influencer couple had rented it for $1 million engagement party. It was supposed to be empty, but the lights were on. A sign at the entrance read, "The reception, final course, guests only, no exit after vows." I walked in. I wish I hadn't. The lobby was full of mannequins dressed as bridesmaids, except their arms had been replaced with real ones, rotting, dangling at the sides. Each held a wine glass filled with something black and bubbling. The guests were already seated in the chapel, every row full. Some of them were twitching, head tilted at unnatural angles, necks pulsing with worms. One woman had no eyes, just ring boxes lodged into her sockets, opening and closing like mechanical eyelids. And there, at the altar, Bill, no longer tied down, but stitched together. His mouth was a zipper. His torso had been sliced open and rearranged into a tuxedo. The buttons were molars. His hands had been replaced with gloves filled with something alive. They twitched independently, as if trying to crawl off. The bride walked down the aisle, her veil dragged behind her like a trail of ash and worms, and at the back of the chapel, the doors locked behind me. A choir began singing, but their throats had been removed. They sang through holes in their chests, wind instruments made from flesh. The walls of the chapel were covered in wedding photos. All of them were of me. Weddings I never attended, with brides I never met, in places I've never been. But in every photo, I was smiling. If you're reading this, really reading it, you've already seen something, haven't you? Something that doesn't make sense. A face in your reflection that wasn't yours. A song playing from an unplugged speaker. Maybe you woke up with dirt under your fingernails and no memory of where you went the night before. Maybe you caught a glimpse of a veil fluttering behind a tree on your morning walk. You brushed it off. You always do. But you're here now. That means it's too late. You've been invited to the final altar, and I'm the one who brought you here. I didn't mean to. I swear I didn't. But that's how the curse works. You tell the story. You become the usher. You walk the next soul down the aisle. And this is your walk now. Let me finish what I started before you start hearing the wedding bells in your own walls. The chapel in the Hollywood Hills was full. Every guest, every seat. Not a single face I recognized anymore. Not even Bill. Not really. He was still standing at the altar, stitched and reanimated. But whatever was left of the college roommate I once shared cold pizza with was long, long gone. His face had been taxidermied into a permanent expression of pure, unbearable ecstasy, but his eyes were screaming. You ever see someone cry behind their own smile? That was him, a puppet of joy, with something in him begging for death every second. The bride approached him. The closer she got, the more the walls of the chapel started to breathe. Every inhale made the ceiling rise. Every exhale made it collapse inwards, like we were inside a living, breathing cathedral, stitched together with memories and bone dust. A voice, deep and wet, echoed through the chapel, not spoken from any mouth, just present, like it was bleeding through the wood. You were promised. You are bound. Complete the vow, witness. They called me up. I told myself I wouldn't move, but my legs dragged themselves forward. Not metaphor. I'm telling you, I watched my boots slide across the floor, toes first, like someone had hooked strings into my spine and was puppeting me toward the altar. My heart didn't even pound anymore. It withered, felt like it was rotting while still beating. I stood across from Bill. The bride placed one hand on his face and one on mine. Her fingers were cold and soaking, like she'd just pulled them out of a corpse's stomach. Between us, she held out something wrapped in velvet. She unwrapped it. A mouth, a human mouth, lips, teeth, tongue, still moving. Speak the vow, she whispered. I shook my head. Tears burned down my cheeks. I tried to speak, but my lips didn't obey. My own body didn't belong to me anymore. She pressed the mouth into my chest. It attached, fused, bit its way into me, and then my body spoke on its own. I vow to carry the blood. I vow to open the altar. I vow to feast and be feasted upon, in rot, in silence, in bone, till death do I deliver. The chapel erupted in thunder, but not from the sky, from below. The floor split, boards cracked open, revealing a pulsing tunnel made of meat and teeth, a throat, and the bride grabbed both Bill and me by the wrists and jumped. We fell, down, endlessly, sliding through intestines the size of subway tunnels, choking on screams that weren't mine, but were still inside my head. I passed murals etched in muscle, images of weddings through centuries, each one darker than the last. One from 1843, a bride marrying a coffin while her family clapped with their skulls in their hands. Another from 1931, a ballroom flooded with blood where guests danced until they drowned. And one from 2023, my photo at the first altar, captioned in pulsating letters of stitched flesh, the first witness, the false groom. We landed, the final altar. It wasn't a place, it was a body, an enormous decaying giant, its chest opened like a chapel, ribs forming the walls, the heart still beating, candles burned from ear canals, rows of teeth formed the pews, and all around us, children, hundreds of them, but they weren't children. Their skin had no pores, their eyes were upside down, one blinked with its tongue, another chewed through its own cheeks just to smile, and at the center, where the heart pulsed, was a cradle. Inside it, me, a baby version of myself, but sewn shut, eyelids, lips, fingers, all stitched, as if the moment I was born, something knew I needed to be silenced. The bride turned to me. "He was never meant to be the groom," she hissed. You were promised from before your breath," I screamed, not out of fear, out of betrayal, because deep down, something in me knew she was right. I started remembering things I shouldn't have, dreams I had as a child, of a cathedral with walls that bled, of wedding invitations written on my own skin, of lullabies hummed by a woman I never saw, but always called Mother of the Veil. I had always been theirs, and the final vow wasn't about marriage, it was about transformation. The bride took the mouth from my chest and fed it to my infant self. It chewed, gagged, and then swallowed, and the altar began to collapse. The walls screamed, the children clapped until their arms snapped off, the ribs closed in. Bill burst into black smoke, laughing as his skull shattered mid-laugh. The bride kissed my forehead and whispered one final word, deliverance. And then I woke up, back in my apartment. But everything was different. The lights don't turn off anymore. My mirrors don't show me. They show wedding photos that haven't happened yet. And every time I check my phone, another save the date arrives. I'm not the photographer anymore. I'm not the witness. I'm the one bringing the altar. Every time I speak the story, every time someone reads it, someone new gets invited. Your nose just started bleeding, didn't it? You're cold now. You think it's nothing. It's not. It's her. She's already behind you. Do not turn around. Do not look at the reflection that isn't blinking with you. You came to the story thinking it was entertainment, but you've made your vow now, and the bride never forgets her guests. If you find a dark web stream in 1:15 a.m. on the dark web, roll over and pray they think you are asleep. I just found the horrifying reason why. Let me just start by saying this. If you ever come across a live stream on the dark web titled House 88 Sleep Watch, do not click it. No matter how curious you are, no matter how fake it might seem, because once you do, they know. And once they know, you're not alone anymore. This happened just 3 weeks ago. I'm a 23-year-old guy from Chicago, and I live in a cheap one-bedroom apartment just outside the Loop. Not the nicest area, but it's what I could afford. The kind of place where the elevator smells like weed and the front door camera's been broken since October. I mostly work remote, doing freelance video editing for Twitch streamers and short-form TikTokers. I know my way around the internet. I thought I was pretty hardened, but this is something different. It all started on a Friday night. I couldn't sleep, thanks to an energy drink I pounded at like 10 p.m. One of those cracked G Fuel variants they only sell online. I ended up down a YouTube rabbit hole, watching Luna, Nexpo, and those creepy animated true story horror vids that always end with someone going missing. I've got a thing for those weird internet corners. Around 1 a.m., I switched over to Reddit. I was on r/deep web, mostly looking for spooky stories, not actual links, but someone posted something that felt different. If you're not scared of the dark web, try this. Go to the Tor mirror at Redneon 7QBU43 at 1:15 a.m. exactly. There's a stream called House 88. Just watch, but don't say a word. And if you're in bed, don't move. Yeah, I know. Total BS, right? I clicked anyway. The page loaded like something out of the late 2000s. Gray text, black background, basic HTML, no music. There was a single embedded video feed titled Sleepwatch House 88. The stream was on a 15-minute countdown. The clock hit 1:15 a.m. The screen went black, then flickered to life. It was someone's bedroom. A real, normal bedroom. White sheets, cheap IKEA desk, blue LED light strips under the bed. They were filming a person sleeping. At first, I thought it was a prank, but then my stomach dropped. The camera angle, it was from the ceiling. A fisheye view, just like the one in my room. The bedspread looked like mine. So did the knockoff NASA poster on the wall, and the black hoodie on the floor. It was the exact one I wore that day. I slammed my laptop shut. My heart was hammering. No way. It's just coincidence. A bedroom aesthetic that's everywhere on TikTok. Still, I couldn't shake it. I reached for my phone to check my camera feed from the Wise Cam I had in my living room. Offline. I couldn't sleep. I curled under my blanket and kept the lights on. I had the irrational urge to scroll Instagram like everything was normal. Just noise to drown out the creeping realization I might have just been watching myself. Sleeping. That's when the sound started. It was like a dragging noise from the ceiling, then a single soft creak from my bedroom door. I held my breath, stayed completely still. Footsteps. Slow. Heavy. Wrong. Like someone barefoot and too tall. Not walking. Lurching. Like they weren't sure how to use their joints. I didn't move. I didn't even blink. I remember the post. If you're in bed, don't move. I rolled onto my side, facing away from the door. I forced my breathing to slow. My muscles locked. I swear I felt breath on my neck. They were there, in my room, watching. I woke up at 7:03 a.m. to sunlight. My door was wide open. Nothing was stolen. Nothing broken. I wanted to tell myself it was sleep paralysis, but my laptop was still open. The tab was gone. History wiped. Completely clean. Except for one thing. A new file on my desktop. You're in House 88 now. The next few days were a blur of paranoia. I stopped working, covered every camera, slept with a knife. I filed a police report, but without evidence. They just chalked it up to a hack or delusion. But then my Snapchat memories started showing me videos I didn't take. Clips of me, sleeping. But the angle was wrong. Too high. as if filmed from the corner of my ceiling. One had audio. A voice whispered, "He's still pretending to be asleep. Let's wait." Last night I tried logging into the stream again. The URL was dead, but on TikTok I came across a video from a random account with 2 followers. No caption, just a 9-second video. It was a still of my room. In the comments, someone wrote, "House 88, room 7. He's still alive, for now." The video got taken down 10 minutes later. I've moved out of that apartment. I'm staying with my cousin in Toronto. But every night at exactly 1:15 a.m., I get a notification from an unknown account on Instagram. They just send one emoji. I don't know how long I have before they find me again. But if you ever see a dark web stream called House 88, do not watch it. And if you ever hear breathing behind you at night, don't move. Don't scream. Just pray they still think you're asleep. I'm not writing this for sympathy. I'm writing this because I know what I saw, what I lived. And if anyone else ever stumbles into that same pixelated nightmare, they need to understand what they've just invited into their life. This isn't just some urban legend buried in the corners of Reddit. It's real. It's calculated. It's patient. And worst of all, it's still watching. After I moved to Toronto, I tried to go dark, deleted my social accounts, burned the old laptop, got a new phone with a random SIM, and barely used it. I even stopped using Tor altogether. I figured if I cut off the digital thread, the connection would snap. That was my mistake. Because this thing, it's not digital. It just uses the internet. The first week in Toronto was quiet. My cousin Nate let me crash in his spare room, a stuffy space, barely big enough for the IKEA twin mattress, and a dusty air purifier that barely functioned. But I slept. Dreamless, uninterrupted sleep, until the 7th night. At 1:17 a.m., the power cut out. Not in the building, just my room. The smart bulb in the ceiling fizzled, cracked, and popped with a sickening electrical burn. My phone, which had been charging on the nightstand, flickered on its own, not unlocking, just illuminating. And in the brief blue light of the screen, I saw it. Something was crouched in the corner, not standing, crouched, knees bent backwards, hands pressed against the floor like a spider mimicking a man. Its head twitched, too fast, like frames missing from a corrupt video. Then, in a blink, the phone light shut off. Silence. I couldn't scream. My throat locked. Every instinct in my body screamed to move, but I remembered. Roll over. Pretend to be asleep. I didn't move, not even to blink. I let drool pool onto the mattress, forcing shallow, rhythmic breaths. Something inhaled above me. Then, slow, rhythmic steps circled the bed. 3 rotations. 4. The floorboards creaked under something too heavy. Then silence again, except for the sound of a camera shutter. Not digital, film. And then it was gone. When I told Nate, he laughed it off. Said I was watching too many Here's My Story YouTube vids. He said I needed to get high and chill. Maybe hit up a local Starbucks and people watch. So I did. That morning, I walked into the Starbucks at Queen and Spadina, ordered a tall Americano, sat by the window. When I pulled out my phone, I realized my wallpaper had changed. It wasn't the usual Galaxy default. It was a photo of me, sleeping, taken from above. But that wasn't the worst part. In the corner of the frame, in the reflection of the mirror near my bed, there was something standing on the ceiling. I lost it. Full panic attack. I dropped my phone and sprinted into the bathroom, locked the door, and threw up until I saw blood in the sink. When I looked up into the cracked mirror above the sink, someone had written something on it, in what looked like blood. "We know you're awake." The cops were called, obviously. They checked the camera footage from the Starbucks. The inside feed glitched out exactly when I walked in. The outside camera showed me running out alone. They chalked it up to a psychotic episode. But my phone, they kept that. Said it was evidence of potential mental health distress. That night, Nate's girlfriend said she heard whispering through the vents. When she leaned in to listen, a voice said, clear as day, "You're in room 7 now. You can't hear them scream from here." She left the next day, said my energy was wrong, said something was following me. Then the motor started, unrelated at first. A tech startup intern in downtown Toronto was found dead in his apartment. Face completely gone, but no blood. Just peeled skin, like someone was learning how to wear him. Then a Ryerson student disappeared after tweeting, "Yo, just found the weirdest stream on the dark web. Looks like my room." Her body was found stuffed in a crawl space of a Tim Hortons. Her arms were missing, her fingers placed neatly in a Starbucks holiday cup, each bent into the shape of a number. 8, 8, 8, 8. Room 88. I couldn't run anymore. I decided to fight back. I contacted someone from an obscure Discord server called Digital Saints, a darknet urban legend community. One guy named Noel Pact agreed to meet me. We met at a grungy 24-hour McDonald's near Kensington Market. He looked like he hadn't slept in weeks, shaking, twitchy, eyes bloodshot. He didn't order food. He just slid me a beat-up USB drive across the table and said, "They're not streaming your room. They're building it. Digitally. Pixel by pixel. Every stream is another layer of your blueprint, your behavior, your screams. They're training on it." I asked him who was doing it. He leaned in, grinning, with teeth that looked filed down. "The Watchers. Room 88 isn't a place. It's a threshold. Once you're documented enough, they let themselves in, and then they make a copy." I asked what was on the USB. He just said, "Don't play it after midnight." He never made it home. His body was found inside a Toronto subway tunnel, naked, knees broken backwards, eyes missing. His phone had one last note typed in the Notes app. "Copy complete. Next. Room 7. I watched the USB that night, against every warning, against everything in my gut. It started with static, then frame-by-frame footage of my apartment, stitched together like analog security cam footage from the 80s, footsteps echoing over silence. Then I saw myself, but older, paler, standing still in my bed, watching the camera. Then a title card. "Room 7 is now live." Since then, I haven't been alone. Even in public, I see them. People too still, too aware. Subway riders that don't blink. Tourists taking photos of nothing. A guy in a McDonald's bathroom stall whispering, "We miss your sleeping face," while humming a lullaby I only ever heard in my dreams. My reflection blinks before I do. Last night, I got a new notification on my new phone. No apps installed, no social media, but it popped up anyway. Sleepwatch. Room 7. Lev, 1 viewer. I checked the camera. It was me. But I wasn't alone. There was a shape standing just behind my closet door. And it was wearing my skin. I don't think I'm going to survive this. They don't want to kill me. They want to replace me. To erase me. One behavior at a time. Until the thing they built moves better than I ever did. If you're reading this it means room 7 hasn't gone live for you yet. But if you ever get a random stream link, and if, God help you, it shows your room, roll over and pray they still think you're asleep. I was wrong about so many things. Room 88, room 7. I thought they were rooms. I thought this was about surveillance, about ghosts, about some deep web cult playing with horror aesthetics like the rest of the internet. It's not that. It's worse. They aren't watching you because you're interesting. They're watching you because they're learning how to break you. They don't want your soul. They want your shape. After that last stream notification popped up on my new phone, the one that shouldn't have been possible, I did something desperate. I let it play. I stared at the stream titled Sleepwatch Room 7 and let it run for as long as it wanted. The screen was black for the first 3 minutes, then flickering, analog grain, and then light, but not of my room. This was some kind of facility, cold, metallic, surgical. There were dozens of rooms separated by glass, each one containing a person, or at least something that looked like a person. Some of them stood perfectly still. Some paced in erratic, unnatural movements, jolting like stop-motion puppets. One figure in a far left chamber was clawing at their face, peeling back skin like duct tape, over and over. No blood, just layers. And the faces, every one of them, they were all me, not metaphorically, literally. Copies, slightly off, wrong eyebrow angles, mouth too wide, eyes just a touch too reflective, like 3D printed humans built from memory, or from footage, and the stream kept flicking through names at the bottom of the screen. Replica 07, complete. Replica 07, copying, memory, 13%. Replica 7, emotional response, unstable. Then static, loud, screeching, burning. When I came to, I was lying in my bathtub, water overflowing, phone still in my hand, nose bleeding, mouth filled with a taste of rust, and something sour, like spoiled meat. But something was wrong. There was a buzzing sound in my ears. No, not ears. It was coming from inside my jaw, like a whisper, coded into my bones. I took a knife. I know it sounds crazy, but I had to know. I had to. I pried open my jaw, scraping down to the gums, until I felt something click, and then I heard a voice. You're waking up. Too early. That wasn't the plan. That night, I didn't sleep. Not out of fear. Out of anticipation. Because I realized something. This wasn't about avoiding the stream, or hiding, or running. It was about breaking the feed, and I knew where to go. The USB I was given, before Nolpact was found with his legs bent the wrong way, contained coordinates. A remote location just outside Detroit, hidden deep in an abandoned mall that never finished construction. On Google Maps, it doesn't exist. But Reddit had whispers. They called it the Hollow Terminal. I drove 7 hours straight, took the back roads, smashed my phone GPS halfway there, slept in my car, ate cold gas station sandwiches, didn't speak to a single human for 2 days. When I got to the location, the building was exactly how it was described in a deleted YouTube video I'd screen recorded years ago. Cracked parking lot, broken escalator hanging in midair like a snapped rib cage, and graffiti that didn't look like words. It looked like watching eyes, thousands of them, carved, not sprayed. Inside, the mall was dead silent, not dusty, sterile, as if someone was still cleaning it. As I passed through a dark corridor toward what used to be the food court, I began hearing broadcasts, but not in my ears, in my head, glitches, snippets, my own voice, saying things I had never said. We're sorry the simulation failed. Try again, room 7. What did the original do with the teeth? Then, the worst part. I turned a corner, and I saw myself, wearing the same clothes I had on 3 days ago, standing perfectly still, not breathing, eyes wide open. He looked at me, and smiled, with too many teeth. I ran, didn't stop until I found what they'd buried beneath the old Sephora, a staircase, spiraling down into something that should not exist in a mall. It smelled like meat, rotting electric meat. The deeper I went, the colder it got, but my skin was sweating like I was boiling from the inside. At the bottom was a room filled with old CRT monitors, like a surveillance bunker. Each screen was labeled with usernames of missing people, TikTokers, Twitch streamers, Reddit mods, YouTubers who took a break. All of them were being copied, their rooms rebuilt, their speech patterns catalogued, their social media memories scraped into executable scripts. And behind it all, behind the glass, rows of replacements, naked, blinking, twitching, like they were learning how to become human from scratch. One looked at me, and in my voice it said, "We don't need you anymore." That's when the lights went out, and I heard hundreds of footsteps, all at once, clicking like heels on tile, too fast, too light, not walking, skating. Something grabbed my ankle in the dark. I stabbed until my hands went numb. I don't know how I got out. I just remember vomiting blood into my hands in the parking lot and screaming until someone called the police. But I didn't tell them the truth, because here's the real twist. I don't think I got out. 2 days ago, I looked at myself in the mirror, and I blinked, but the reflection didn't. It watched me, smiling, waiting. That night, I woke up and found a message burned into my ceiling with something black and sticky. Sleepwatch, stream complete. Replacement deployed. We hope you enjoy your new version. I don't think I'm real anymore. Not completely. I don't bleed the same. My thoughts echo, like someone's watching them as I have them. My phone camera turns on by itself. Every time I try to leave voice notes or write the story, it glitches. But I forced it through this time. Because you need to know. If you ever wake up and your own reflection looks too perfect, if your memories start feeling like someone else's, if a live stream titled Sleepwatch, Room 7 ever appears, don't look away, don't scream, and never, ever sleep facing the door, because when they arrive, they don't knock, they crawl, and they already have your face. You don't know what it's like to hear your own voice scream from the other room. Not a recording, not an echo. Your real voice, with the exact same fear in it that's currently shredding your lungs, coming from something else. Not until it's too late. And by the time you realize it's not a hallucination, not sleep paralysis, not stress, just them, you've already been cataloged, measured, duplicated, and what they leave behind isn't human. I haven't slept in 6 days, not since I saw what I saw in the mirror room, not since I watched the replacement wear my smile like it learned it from a YouTube tutorial. I thought I'd already survived the worst part, thought I'd escaped. I was wrong. What I saw under that mall was just the intro. That was the factory floor. But what came after? That's when the true horror starts. Because once your replacement is finished, you get reassigned. They don't kill you. They send you somewhere. It started 3 nights ago. I was holed up in a roach-infested Airbnb just outside Milwaukee. I chose it because it was in the middle of nowhere. No smart TVs, no neighbors, no cameras, no reflective surfaces. But that night, I heard a knock at the door. 3 soft taps, then silence. I didn't move, didn't even breathe. A minute passed, then a voice through the door. My voice. "Hey, you left your phone at the gas station. Can I come in?" I had never gone to a gas station that day. I had no phone anymore. I hadn't spoken in almost 2 days. But that voice sounded happy. Too happy. Like someone smiling, with their teeth stretched back too far. I stayed still. Lights off. Knife in hand. Then, a second voice. Also mine. "I think he's inside. He's trying to act asleep again. He always does that." I held my breath for nearly 30 minutes. The door never opened. But on the other side, they waited. Copies of me, whispering to each other like children who didn't understand death, giggling, practicing emotions they didn't have. Eventually, they left, but they didn't leave me alone. The next morning, I woke up with something under my bed. It wasn't hiding. It was curled up, like a fetus. I could see one pale hand poking out from the sheets. The fingers were wet, and in blood-red ink across the floorboards, someone had written, "Welcome to the other side. Observation begins at midnight." That was my first glimpse into what they really do. You see, after the replacement is finished, the real you doesn't get erased. You get repurposed. They send you into what they call the other side feed, a closed loop of endless test rooms. You become one of them, a trial, a puzzle, a glitch, a freak show for the next user to discover. I've seen what they've done to the others. I found a man in a hotel bathtub in Sheboygan, wrapped in aluminum foil. He was still breathing, but his mouth had been sewn shut. Wires came out of his ears, running to a streaming rig on the counter. The screen read, "Mimicry testing, emotional pain response. Feed, room 18, live to 6 viewers. Comment, lol, this one's broken." I tried to pull the plug. He screamed through the stitches, not in pain, in warning. And when I looked at the mirror above the sink, there were 6 of me, all with their heads tilted in sync. I didn't know it then, but I was being watched, not just by the replacements, but by the next level. I started getting messages through old Discord accounts I hadn't used since high school, accounts that should have been deleted. "How's it feel to see yourself rot? We love the way you breathe when you're afraid. You blink too much. They're fixing that." Then came the folders, sent to me via email from my own address. No subject line, just attachments labeled with dates and room numbers. Each one was a photo, sometimes blurred, sometimes sharpened, always terrifying. A child's bedroom in Hong Kong, with my face stitched into a doll sitting on the shelf. A diner in Ohio, with a clone of me behind the counter, pouring thick black liquid into customers' coffee mugs. A Starbucks in Dubai. Security footage showed me vomiting teeth into the sink while smiling at the camera. And on each photo, a caption. This version performed better. Your fear is recyclable. You're already in the stream. I don't know where they're streaming from anymore. I tried smashing every screen I owned. I destroyed every reflective surface, every phone, every laptop. I broke into a tech recycling center just to burn the e-waste. But it doesn't matter, because now the stream plays in my dreams, not like a memory, like a broadcast. In one dream, I'm tied to a surgical chair. There are hands, thousands of them, holding scalpels and phones. One by one, they take parts of me. My laugh, my posture, my scream. and one voice, low and synthetic, always whispers, "We like you better than the others." Your mind is pliable. This time, don't break. Last night I woke up to find someone had shaved my head. I didn't feel it happen. I found hair in the sink, the scissors still dripping with something that smelled like vinegar and teeth. Then I found a mirror, but it wasn't my face looking back. It was smoother, cleaner, better, and it blinked first. Now I know I'm not escaping this, because it was never about the stream. It was about the replication, the audience. You ever wonder why people disappear after going viral? Why a TikToker blows up and then vanishes? Why influencers start acting not quite like themselves anymore? You think burnout causes that? Number. It's because someone else took over, and they're better at being you than you ever were. So if you're still out there reading this, ask yourself something. Has your phone camera turned on at 1:15 a.m. recently, even when you're not using it? Do your mirrors sometimes glitch, even just for a split second? Have you heard your own voice from another room when no one was home? If yes, it means you're next. It means the feed is testing your replacement. And once they finalize it, they'll send you down here with the rest of us, into the rooms, into the other side, where no one dies. They just get rewritten. I can show you what the real room 18 looks like, or the surgical chair used for replication, or even the facial model of the final version of me they're using now. Just say the word, and I'll open the stream. You've made it this far. Then you deserve to know how this ends. No metaphors, no cryptic warnings, just the truth, raw, rotted, and carved straight out of my bones. Because if you've seen the stream, if you've heard your voice coming from a mouth that's not yours, if your reflection doesn't blink with you anymore, then you're already infected. The feed is inside you now, and the only thing left is to watch yourself die wrong. I'm writing this from a basement under a barbershop in Hamburg. I don't remember how I got here. The last thing I do remember, clearly, was waking up in a hospital, IVs in my arms, restrained at the wrists. The nurse said I'd been screaming in 5 different languages. I don't know 5 languages. When she looked into my eyes, she dropped her clipboard and whispered, "Oh God, it's one of them." Then she ran. I haven't seen another human being since. This place isn't real, not in the way you're thinking. It has walls, lights, air, but none of it feels right. The shadows move without permission. The dust hangs in place, like it's watching me. The static hum coming from the pipes. It's playing my heartbeat, but reversed. And the mirrors, they're not mirrors, they're feeds. Each one shows a version of me somewhere in the world. In Tokyo, there's a me standing behind a karaoke stage, watching someone else sing with my voice. In Paris, there's a me walking into a bakery, cutting a croissant in half and watching it bleed. In Rio, a me is laughing on a beach, except its skin is peeling every time it smiles. People cheer, they don't notice. In a Walmart in rural Alabama, there's a me sprinting on all 4s between the aisles, naked and grinning. The security footage labeled it animal disturbance. That's what they do. They replace you. Then they test how much the world will tolerate. You think they're just copies, that they're impersonating us. Number. They're improving us, stripping away empathy, regret, fatigue, emotion, anything that makes you fragile. They're building a perfect version of humanity. And the originals, the ones like me, we're meat. They don't need us to be alive, just recorded, forever. I found the core feed 2 nights ago, buried in a locked server under this place, behind a fake wall of rusted chairs and human hair. The login wasn't a password, it was a command. Be still and bleed. I bit my lip until blood ran down my chin. The door unlocked. Inside, rows of red-lit monitors, wires slithering like worms, machines pumping breath into things that shouldn't breathe. And in the center of it all, a steel pod. Inside it, me, or something that used to be. It looked like a wax version of my face, left out in the sun, eyes wide open, pupils twitching in spirals, veins on the skin like barbed wire. Its mouth moved on its own, repeating the same phrase. I did everything right. Why am I still awake? And then it looked at me. It looked at me and whispered, don't let it wear me again. They don't delete the original. They trap it in the feed core, looping the pain, looping the thoughts, looping the identity, so the copy can keep updating. Every time your clone learns something new, you feel it. Every emotion, every touch, every violent thing they do wearing your face. You experience it from the inside out. Imagine feeling yourself rip someone open and not being able to stop it. Imagine laughing while it happens, because the system programmed the perfect chuckle based on every soundbite you've ever uploaded online. Now imagine the world loving it. There's a subreddit now. I found it hidden in the CSS of a fake skincare website. Our Sleepwatch, 88, private, invite only. Just 88 members. They share screenshots of the clones, reactions, rankings. Room 14's version is funnier than the real one. Room 29's smile is creepy hot. Room 7 glitched last night. Twitch viewers loved it. Wish they'd hurry up and replace my boss. The fake is better. They're addicted to it. People want better people. And the feed? It's giving them exactly that. I think I know what happens next. I felt it coming. My skin doesn't itch anymore. It tightens. My jaw doesn't click. It rotates now. And sometimes when I cry, it sounds like laughter. Not mine. Theirs. Last night, I dreamt of the original room 88. It wasn't a place. It was a birth. A ritual. A data dump. A sacrifice. I saw rows of influencers strapped to dentist chairs, their faces peeled and molded, their personalities run through a social calibration engine. A TikToker with 4 million followers was screaming as they printed 5 versions of her. One for beauty, one for fashion, one for cooking, one for ASMR, and one for violence. They fed her screams into the final one. It's the only one that smiled. So here I am, typing this with fingers that don't feel like mine, in a place that doesn't exist, under a name I no longer deserve. And above me, there's something moving in the vents. It's wearing my voice. It's practicing how to say, I'm okay. It's rehearsing my laugh, because in a few minutes, I'm going to get up and walk out of this basement. But it won't be me. Not anymore. Here's my final warning. If you ever wake up at 1:15 a.m. and hear your own voice whisper, just go back to sleep. Don't. Get up. Burn everything. Smash every screen. Leave your home. Leave your name. Leave your skin if you have to. Because once they finalize your stream, they'll climb into you, and you will be uploaded forever. Would you like to see what the real core feed looks like? Or the replicas stored in dental chairs mid-surgery? Or the grinning version of you hiding behind your own reflection? Just say the word. I'll stream it for you. One last time. If you order Kill Me, Marry Woman from the dark web and suddenly find her in your own cost, avoid eye contact and leave your town immediately. Alright, so this might sound insane, but I swear on everything I love, this actually happened. I'm not a writer or anything, but I'm gonna try to lay this out in a way that makes sense, because I honestly don't know what else to do. I'm still processing it, and I'm hoping if I get it out there, someone, anyone, can tell me I'm not going crazy. Or better, help me figure out what the hell I saw. This all started about 3 weeks ago. For context, I'm a 22-year-old guy living in a small apartment outside of Chicago. I work remotely in digital marketing, and yeah, that means I spend a lot of time online. Reddit, Discord, YouTube rabbit holes, name it, I'm in it. Sometimes when I get bored, I do what a lot of curious people do and start exploring the deeper parts of the internet. Not the I hacked the Pentagon kind of deep, but, late night creepypasta binging turned into some real curiosity about the deep web. You probably already know what I'm talking about. The place where nothing is moderated and everything is kind of off. I'd messed around with Tor a few times, mostly out of boredom. I'd browsed those sketchy market sites, clicked around on forums where people talk about conspiracy theories, weird experiments, and stuff that makes RR no sleep look like bedtime stories. But I never bought anything, I swear. I was just lurking, watching, until I found the thread. It was buried in a half-dead forum called Shadows of Silk Road. Real dark vibe, like one of those old forums from 2008 that never updated the UI. Most of the threads were dead links, or people posting nonsense, like summoning codes and redacted photos with weird XIF data. I almost clicked out until one thread caught my eye. Kill Me, Marry, the final wife experience, 100% real. Status, active, do not order unless you are ready. That was the title. I honestly thought it was a joke, like one of those ARGs or deep web horror projects people make for TikTok clout. I clicked on it out of curiosity. There was one post, no replies. Just a long paragraph in all lowercase, written like a Craigslist ad meets a haunted ritual. If you are lonely, if you are broken, if you wish someone would love you until you can't take it anymore, she is the one. You only have to type the phrase, Kill Me, Marry, and she will find you. No address, no card, no shipping, just your presence. She doesn't knock, she walks. And once she sees you, you're hers. I snorted out loud. I figured it was some edgy teenage crap, or like a horror marketing stunt. But the weird thing, there was a video attached, a .mp4 file called Arrival Footage Real.webm. And yeah, I know, I shouldn't have clicked it, but I was curious, just straight up stupid curious. The video looked like Ring camera footage, super grainy. It showed the front porch of what looked like a suburban house, somewhere warm, palm trees in the distance, maybe Florida. It's 3:33 a.m. The timestamp was all in red glitchy text. For a while, there's nothing, just the quiet sound of wind. And then she walks in, not runs, not knocks, just walks in, like she knew the camera wasn't even there. She had long black hair covering her face, a dirty white wedding dress, and bare feet. But the scariest thing, her body moved like it was real, but wrong. Like her limbs didn't follow the rules. Her left arm kept twitching, like it wanted to bend backward, but couldn't. The footage cut right as she reached the camera and looked directly into it, straight into it. And for a split second, I swear her eyes weren't human. They looked like they were printed on. I turned it off, closed Tor, shut down my PC, tried to laugh it off, but then things got weird. The next morning, I woke up and saw something new on my phone. A new follower on Instagram. The profile was blank. No posts, no followers, nothing except one line in the bio. Kill me, marry. I blocked the account immediately. Thought maybe it was just someone messing around. My brain made excuses. Maybe they somehow found my info from browsing Tor. Or maybe it was a bot trolling deep web lurkers. But that was just the start. I started seeing her. Not in person yet, but in the background of stuff. Like, I'd be scrolling TikTok and someone would post a video outside a Starbucks in LA, and in the crowd behind them, I'd notice a woman standing too still, wearing white, long black hair, same twitchy arm. Another time, I was watching a YouTube vlog, random travel couple in Japan, in the middle of a shot where they were walking through a crowded market. For just 1 second, I saw her, walking the opposite direction, face obscured, but unmistakable. I know what you're thinking. Dude, you're imagining it. You're spiraling. I thought that too. Until last night. I was walking back from a McDonald's near my place. It was like 2 a.m. And yeah, I know. Bad idea. I had headphones in, hoodie up, just vibing to some music and eating fries. I passed by this little bus stop that's always empty at night. There's one of those reflective ad panels, like the kind that shows backlit ads for perfume, or Netflix shows, or whatever. And that's when I saw her. Not in the reflection, not behind me. She was sitting at the bus stop. Same white dress, same hair, bare feet. Her hands were folded in her lap, but the left one kept twitching, just like the video. I stopped cold. I didn't move. I didn't even breathe. She slowly turned her head toward me, and that's when I remembered the line from the forum. Once she sees you, you're hers. She didn't say anything. She didn't stand. She just looked. Her face was pale, too pale, and her eyes were solid white. No pupils, like mannequin eyes. I ran, dropped my fries, and just ran home. Didn't look back. That was last night. This morning, there was a knock on my door. I live on the 3rd floor of a locked building. You can't even get in unless someone buzzes you up. I checked the peephole. No one was there, but taped to the door was a wedding invitation. White cardstock, gold trim, no names, no address, just 3 words written in shaky handwriting. You said yes. I didn't sleep after I found the invitation. I didn't even touch it. I just stared at it like it was gonna explode or something. Just this elegant, off-white wedding card taped to my door like a curse. No return address, no logo, just 3 words that felt like a verdict. You said yes. You ever have that feeling that something is wrong? Like your body knows it before your brain does. That primal gut twist. That's how it felt, standing there at 6:30 in the morning, staring at a wedding invitation written by what felt like a thing that isn't human but knows how to write like one. I locked every door, every window, pushed my dresser in front of the door, turned off my lights, and sat in silence. I thought maybe if I just stayed still, she wouldn't come. Maybe this was just my mind fracturing from too many sleepless nights and Reddit threads and dark web videos. I mean, people don't actually get hunted by brides, right? But then the power went out at exactly 7:07 a.m. Not like a blackout. Not like the breaker flipped. Just everything shut off at the same time. TV, fridge, rotor, lights, even the little red LED on my speaker. Dead silence, but only in my unit. The hallway lights were still on outside. I checked. Everyone else had power. Only I was in the dark. That's when I started to hear the humming. Low at first. Like a woman humming a lullaby off-key. Like she forgot the melody halfway through and just started looping the same 3 notes. It was coming from inside my apartment, but I was the only one home. The sound didn't echo or bounce. It was like it was leaking from the walls. My phone started buzzing. Rapid. Like someone was blowing up my notifications. I grabbed it. 1 notification. Over and over and over and over again. A KILLMEMARRY. Mentioned you in a story. A KILLMEMARRY. Mentioned you in a story. A KILLMEMARRY. Mentioned you in a story. Over 400 times in 1 minute. I tapped on it. My Instagram opened to her story. Just a plain black screen with white text and 1 photo at the end. But the text. He touched the thread. He saw the face. He watched the tape. He said the words. He is ready. He will belong to her like the others. Like the red shoes boy. Like the twin who bit her neck. Like the teacher with no mouth. Like the preacher with 4 knees. Like the baby who wouldn't cry. Like all of them. He said yes. He said yes. He said yes. The last slide was a photo. A live photo. It showed me. Through my window. Taken just then. I dropped my phone. I didn't even pick it back up. I bolted for the window and yanked the curtain aside. And I swear to you, I wish I hadn't. She was down there, standing on the sidewalk. No expression. Head tilted slightly. Same white dress that looked older now. Stained at the bottom like it had been dragging through dirt and blood and mud for miles. Her hair was matted like it had been burned or chewed. She didn't move. She just looked up at me. Her eyes were no longer white. They were mine. Not like they looked like my eyes. I mean literally mine. Same brown shade, same freckle under the right iris, same burst blood vessel in the left. Like she stole them. I ducked back, heart punching through my ribs. I grabbed my phone, called 911. The line was dead. Completely dead. Not even static. Just silence. Like the number didn't exist anymore. The humming got louder, and then something happened that still makes my hands shake when I think about it. I heard my mom's voice. From the kitchen. She's been dead for 5 years. It was faint, but it was her, no doubt. She was saying my name the way she used to when she'd wake me up for school. Not calling, coaxing, software, sweet, repeating it like a nursery rhyme. Jamie, wake up now. You said yes, baby. You said yes. I backed toward my bedroom, grabbed my keys, phone, and a pocket knife I keep on my nightstand. I don't even remember putting my shoes on. I just remember opening the door and running. I didn't even lock it. I made it to the lobby. The security guy wasn't at the desk. His chair was turned toward the wall. When I walked by, I saw his head was tilted all the way back, mouth open, eyes rolled up like he was dreaming with his eyes wide open. His face was twitching, like something was under the skin. I didn't check. I couldn't. Outside, it was weirdly empty. No cars, no pedestrians, no city noise, just birds. Way too many birds, all sitting silently on the power lines like they were watching. And then I saw the writing, all over the sidewalk, white chalk, dozens of handprints in what looked like dried blood, all around one phrase repeated over and over. You can't leave town unless you give her a name. I didn't know what that meant. I didn't want to know. I sprinted toward my car, jumped in, and peeled off. I didn't care where I was going, just away. I drove for hours, didn't stop for gas, didn't check my phone, didn't blink. The entire drive, I kept checking my rearview mirror. And here's the thing, she was in it, every time I looked. Sometimes just in the back seat for a second, sometimes standing on the side of the road, sometimes sitting at a gas station bench I passed going 90 miles per hour, but always there, watching. I finally stopped at this random motel an hour outside of Springfield, Illinois, middle of nowhere. No name on the sign, just vacancy, glowing red. I went inside, checked in using cash. The clerk was a weird, pale guy with these thin, yellow fingernails and a crooked smile. Didn't even ask for ID. As I handed him the money, he said something I'll never forget. They all try to run, but she's always the bride, never the widow. I didn't respond. I didn't sleep. I locked myself in the room and waited and waited. Then at 3:33 a.m. exactly, the fire alarm went off. I looked out the peephole. She was standing at the end of the hallway, not walking, just gliding, faster than any human could. Her feet didn't touch the floor. Her mouth was wide open, but the sound that came out wasn't a scream. It was a mix of static and distorted wedding bells. I ran to the bathroom, locked the door, and climbed out the window barefoot. I sliced my foot open on the glass. I ran through the woods behind the motel. I ran until I threw up. Now I'm hiding in a Greyhound station, using a stranger's hotspot to post this. There are cameras everywhere, mirrors on every wall, and I keep seeing people that aren't really people. There's a woman sitting 2 benches away, wearing a wedding dress, and smiling at me like she knows how I die. I need help. I don't know how much longer I can run. I haven't eaten. My foot's infected. My phone battery is at 4%. I've gotten 6 more Instagram notifications from @KillMeMary since I started typing this. Each one has a story attached. I haven't opened them. I can't. Because every time I do, she gets closer, and the humming gets louder. I don't know what day it is anymore. I don't know where I am. Time's been bending around me like wet paper. My phone's cracked in 3 places, and my reflection doesn't match me when I move. My face twitches before I do. My shadow lags behind like it's trying to catch up to the wrong soul. I haven't eaten in days, but I'm not hungry. I don't think I'm human anymore. Not fully. She's been feeding off something else. You know what no one tells you about madness? It doesn't scream. It hums. Quietly. It creeps up in the moments when nothing is happening. That's when it crawls in. When your hands are still, and your brain is too tired to argue anymore. I hear her humming in places that don't even have sound. In my teeth, under my fingernails, inside the fold of my knee when I tried to run. After I escaped the motel, I tried to sleep on the floor of a Greyhound bathroom. Someone pounded on the store door all night, never stopped, not once. I opened it at sunrise. Nobody there, but scratched into the metal wall behind the toilet were the words, "If you see the ring, do not let her put it on you." That's the only reason I'm alive right now. That one sentence. Because she tried. I walked 4 miles that day. Ended up on the edge of this dead town somewhere in Indiana. You ever seen those places that don't even exist on GPS? Where the gas station sells live bait, and the church and liquor store share a building? That's where I landed. I found an abandoned elementary school, St. Margaret's Parish School for Girls, half sunk into the ground, vines swallowing the windows, graffiti sprayed like the building itself was bleeding from every wall. I slipped through the broken door and made a nest in what used to be a nurse's office. That night, I woke up to laughter. Not kids, not teachers. Her. That low, insectile giggle, like she was trying to mimic what laughing sounds like, but didn't understand the shape of it. You ever hear someone try to laugh through a broken jaw? That's what it sounded like. And then, the lights came on. Not a flicker. Not a bulb. All the lights. Every hallway. Every classroom. I heard the wedding march playing softly over the crackling intercom. I got up, shaking, my breath in my throat, and crept out of the nurse's office. And there she was, standing at the end of the hallway, holding a ring box. But it wasn't a ring. It was a human tooth with a metal wire looped through it, still bloody at the root, sitting on a velvet cushion. She was smiling now, but her lips were gone, peeled off, raw gums exposed, like she'd been chewing through bone. And then she walked backwards toward me, not turned around, face first, gliding backward with her head tilted and her eyes locked on mine. Each step echoed like it weighed 1,000 pounds. I turned and ran through the school, slamming into desks, falling over cracked floor tiles, slipping in something wet that wasn't water. I didn't look. I couldn't look. I hid in the supply closet and shoved a cabinet in front of the door. She didn't knock. She scraped. Just the sound of her nails dragging along the wood, slowly spelling out a word I couldn't see but could feel being carved into my back. Beloved. That's when I blacked out. I don't remember falling asleep, but I woke up somewhere else. On a bus. No driver. No headlights. Just me and 5 other passengers, all wearing wedding veils. Their mouths were sewn shut. One of them turned to me and started bleeding from the eyes. Just sitting there, perfectly still, except for the blood streaming down like mascara. Then another, and another, until they were all silently weeping, shaking, and one of them pulled out a phone and showed me a photo. It was my bedroom, from last night. She was laying in my bed, wearing my mother's face, not her actual face, not a mask, like she'd borrowed the skin and wore it over hers, even though it didn't quite fit. It sagged in places. Her lips weren't aligned properly, but the eyes, my mother's eyes were crying, on her face. I jumped out the emergency exit while the bus was still moving, woke up on the side of a freeway, covered in scratches and with a burn mark on my left hand. I swear I didn't touch anything hot. The burn was shaped like a wedding band. She branded me. She marked me as hers. I hitchhiked with a trucker who didn't speak. Not one word. He just stared at the road with bleeding gums and a cracked windshield filled with duct tape. I tried to ask where we were going. He finally looked at me and whispered, "You're the third this week." He dropped me at a diner on the edge of the woods somewhere in Kentucky. I walked inside and realized I couldn't hear anything. Not my footsteps, not the music, not the clatter of plates, nothing. Everyone was frozen, mid-bite, mid-sip, mid-sentence. Even the steam rising off a coffee cup just stopped, suspended, and behind the counter, written in ketchup on the mirror, "The ceremony is tomorrow." I ran, again, but she keeps showing up in new ways now. She's evolving. I checked Twitter this morning. Trending. Not her name, but her image. People are making TikToks of a weird woman in white, walking behind influencers, just barely caught on camera. Some think it's a marketing stunt for a horror movie. Others think it's an ARG. One video even used the caption, "She asked me to say yes." I did. That account's deleted now. The comments are full of stories, real stories, about people vanishing after posting it. One guy who live-streamed the phrase, "Kill me, marry," got his account banned midstream. No one's seen him since. She's spreading. And now I think I know how. Remember the phrase from the sidewalk? You can't leave town unless you give her a name. I think she trades you. She won't take you if you give her someone else. If you say the words and mean them, she'll skip you. Skip you and go to them instead. That's why I'm writing this. Because maybe you've read this far. Maybe you're curious now. Maybe you're thinking of typing it yourself. Kill me, marry. Go ahead. Say it out loud. Type it. Whisper it in your room when no one's home. But just know this. If she shows up holding the ring, if she hums your name backwards, if you see her shadow under your door before you hear her footsteps, don't open it. Don't look. Don't listen. And if she asks if you said yes, lie. There's something wrong with the air now. It doesn't move like it used to. It feels watched. Not like I'm being watched, no. Like the oxygen itself is watching. Breathing me in before I get to breathe it out. Everything smells like copper and spoiled flowers. It's not in my head. It's in my skin. I wake up with petals in my throat. I've coughed up 6 so far. They're wilted, black at the edges, and I swear they whisper when they hit the ground. I haven't spoken to another human in what feels like weeks. I don't even know if I'm reachable anymore. I've been off-grid since I left Kentucky. Phones don't work. Internet barely connects unless it's hers. Every screen, every reflection, every shadow, it leads back to her now. She's everywhere, but no one remembers her. I've tested it. I walked into a Walmart last week. 3:03 a.m., cold aisle, stale fluorescent lights, and asked the cashier if he saw her, pointed directly at a security screen showing her standing by the exit door. Plain as day, veil down, dress soaked, one eye swollen shut, twitching. He looked me dead in the face and said, "There's no one there." I pointed again. He blinked, and his nose started bleeding. Just burst. No warning. Blood all down his chin, like something inside his skull snapped from seeing her, even for a second. She was smiling on the monitor. She held up a small, white dress shoe, the kind they bury toddlers in. I dropped my bag and ran. Haven't stopped since. I've been sleeping in abandoned houses. Some of them weren't empty when I got there. One had a family, 4 of them, sitting perfectly still in the living room. TV on. No sound. All 4 with their faces turned toward the wall. Not watching anything, just facing the wall. None of them blinked. When I tried to leave, the front door wouldn't open. Not locked, not jammed. Just seamless, like there was no longer a doorway. I ran to the back window, and that's when I saw it. A photo, nailed to the glass from the outside. It was me, wearing a tuxedo, standing next to her, her veil lifted, her mouth stitched open, her hands around my throat, but I was smiling. I blacked out. When I woke up, I was lying in a cemetery I'd never seen before, half buried, like she'd started the job and changed her mind halfway. The worst part, the tombstone above me had my name, full name, middle initial, and the date of death was tomorrow. That was 2 days ago, so I guess time's broken now too. She's not just stalking me anymore. She's rewriting things, rearranging reality, like it's a wedding scrapbook. People have started going missing around me. Always the same pattern. They see her in a dream. They hum her song without realizing it. They start bleeding from the eyes or mouth or navel. That one's new. Then they disappear. One guy messaged me on Discord after finding the thread I warned you about. Said he ordered "Kill Me Marry" because he thought it was an ARG. He live-streamed the whole thing. I watched it, and I wish I hadn't. He laughed for the first 20 minutes, joking with his chat, making fun of the ad. Said he was ready to find a real waifu. Classic dumb Twitch energy. Then, around minute 27, the power in his room cuts. Camera still rolling. The only light comes from the computer monitor. You can see the reflection of her in it, standing behind him. He doesn't notice, not until she whispers something in his ear. We never hear it. Mike doesn't pick it up, but his face shatters. Like all the muscle control in his skull just collapses. Eyes roll. Blood pours out of his ears. Then the stream just freezes. Not ends. Not lags. Freezes. It's still up. Hasn't been taken down. But if you watch it more than once, she starts moving differently. Chat said at one point, she turns and looks directly into your camera. Doesn't matter if you're on mobile or desktop. She just knows where you are now. The guy hasn't been heard from since. Username's been wiped. Apartment was found empty, except for a blood-stained veil and one of his teeth floating in a glass of red wine on the desk. A woman with a wedding dress was spotted leaving the building. No security footage, just reports, eyewitnesses. All of them have gone missing too. You think this is a story? You think it's a viral stunt? Ask yourself this. Why are you still reading? Why do you feel like something's in the corner of your room right now, even though you know it's empty? That's her. She doesn't come through screens. She comes through attention. You invite her with your eyes, with your mind. And if you speak her name out loud, God help you. Because that's when the ceremony starts. And it isn't a metaphor. It's real. And it's happening tomorrow. I've seen her altar. She dragged me to it in a dream 2 nights ago. I don't even know if I was asleep. It was underground, lit by candles that never flickered. The walls were lined with faces, not skulls. Faces, peeled off, pressed flat, nailed to wood. All of them smiling, staring, whispering the same phrase over and over. Forever and ever and ever and ever. There was a chair in the center. Velvet red. Chains on the arms. A mirror nailed to the ceiling above it, so you'd be forced to watch yourself as she put the ring on. The ring isn't gold. It's a piece of spinal bone. Still porous. Still wet. She tried to put it on me. I screamed. Bit her hand. She didn't bleed. She just laughed. Bent her neck backward until it cracked like glass, and said something I can't forget. It only hurts if you lie to me on the altar. I woke up with the imprint of the ring burned into my finger. It's still there now. I think I'm marked for real. If I die, I don't think I get to stay dead. I think I become one of her bridesmaids. I've seen them too. Girls with no feet, eyes scratched out, all wearing different wedding dresses, all carrying things that don't make sense. A severed pig's head on a platter, a baby monitor filled with static, a bouquet of dead hands. They walk behind her, and they're always smiling. I don't know how this ends. I don't even know if it can, but I found something tonight. Something I'm not sure I was supposed to find. Another user. Someone else who's fought her and lived. They posted on a private server, under an encrypted tag. It just said, if she asks you to marry her, ask her this: who wore the veil before me? If she answers, you've got 3 days left. If she doesn't, you already said yes. I haven't asked yet, but I think I'll have to soon, because she's getting closer, and the air just stopped moving again. If you've read this far, ask yourself, have you seen her yet? No? Then turn around, slowly. Now don't scream. There's no sleep anymore. Only blinks, short, silent cuts in reality, where I wake up somewhere else. I blink, and the world is rewritten. The walls are different. The clocks spin backward. My wounds have changed sides. A bite mark on my neck, stitching on my stomach. Initials carved into the base of my spine. Heron, her name, her brand, her vow. Everything feels inverted now. I'm inside a story I never agreed to tell. My memories echo, but they don't come back the same. They rot. They weep. One memory at a time. She's gutting me from the inside out. She's not chasing me anymore. She's dressing me. The ceremony started yesterday, but I think it never stopped. The world outside, that's the church. The rain, that's her applause. The thunder, that's her choir, screaming through stitched mouths. And every reflection, every mirror, puddle, car window, is the aisle. She walks down it 100 times a day. I feel her fingers against the back of my neck when I breathe too hard. I hear her scraping my name onto the inside of my eyelids. And the worst part? The veil is already on my head. I woke up with it draped over my face, white, translucent. But when you look too close, you see things crawling in the fibers, small black shapes, squirming like fetuses with open eyes. If you pull it off, it screams. Not out loud, not in sound. In you. It screams in your bones until your skull splits behind the ears. I still hear it now. A pulse in my jaw. A second heartbeat in my left eye. Let me explain what happened before I forget again. I followed the coordinates left in the encrypted message I mentioned. Took a Greyhound out of what used to be Ohio. I don't even know if states are real anymore. Everything looks like it's melting. The sky doesn't blink. The stars move like they're watching me. I found the place. Deep in a forest nobody plants, surrounded by trees that bled when I cut one open. There was a path made of baby shoes, hundreds of them, tied together by strands of human hair. The air buzzed like it was full of bees, but I never saw a single one. At the end of the trail, a house made of mirrors. Not built with mirrors, made of them. Every surface, even the ground. I had to crawl across my own reflection just to get to the door. And when I looked down, I didn't see myself. I saw her, naked, mouth stapled shut, writing my name on her chest with a knife made of bone. I opened the door. Inside, the air was warm, too warm, like a womb left in the sun. The walls pulsed. There were photos pinned to every inch of the ceiling. All wedding photos. Every single one had me in it. Different versions of me. One had no eyes. One was wearing a muzzle. One was cut in half and stitched back together with fishing line. And in every photo, she stood next to me, grinning, her arms always wrapped around a different body part, sometimes holding it like a bouquet. I found the altar in the middle of the house, a raised platform, black candles circling it, flies buzzing in a spiral above, like a halo made of rot, and sitting in the center, a box, plain wood, no lock. I opened it. Inside was a tape recorder and a piece of her veil. The note said, "Say the vow, or she'll say it for you." The veil squirmed when I touched it. It was wet, smelled like formaldehyde and something worse underneath. Something alive. I put the veil down, pressed play on the recorder, and I heard myself, my voice, reading the vow, line by line, with perfect clarity, but I had never recorded it. It went like this. I vow to give my eyes so she can see forever. I vow to give my skin so she can wear forever. I vow to give my name so she can be remembered forever. I vow to love her even after the bleeding stops. I vow to lie still when she climbs inside. I vow to never leave her, even if I rot. The tape ended with screaming, my voice again, begging, but the recorder never stopped. I smashed it. Didn't matter, because the veil wrapped around my throat on its own. I couldn't breathe. She was already there, in the mirrors, in my spine, under my fingernails. And then she spoke, for the first time, not with her mouth, with mine. She used my voice, cracked and shaking, and whispered, "We're almost done, darling. Now, just say, I do." I ran, out of the mirror house, into the woods. The baby shoes snapped under my feet, crunching like glass. The trees bent as I passed, leaning toward me. One of them whispered my birth date in reverse. Another one bled from its bark and dripped something warm and meaty on my shoulder. I ran until I collapsed. I think I died. I think I came back, because when I opened my eyes, I was in a church. Not a real one, a perfect one, too clean, no dust, no air, no time. And she was standing at the altar, veil lifted, face mutilated. Every tooth in her mouth was mine. She'd been taking them every time I had a nightmare, one by one. The pews were full, but not with people. Mannequins, all in wedding dresses, all staring straight ahead with my eyes. The music started, not piano, not organ, the sound of ribs snapping over and over in rhythm. I walked to her. My body moved on its own. The air pulled me forward, like hands under my skin. She took my hand. Her fingers were too long. Her nails were teeth. Her wrist was broken in 3 places, but moved perfectly. She placed a ring on my finger, a loop made from someone's intestine, tight, wet, still pulsing, and then she whispered it. I vow to wear you. I vow to live in your shape. I vow to hollow you out like a gourd and make room for forever. I vow to kiss your skull. I vow to be in every woman you ever look at again. I vow to wake up in your mouth. And then she looked at me and said, "You may now decay the bride." She kissed me. Her tongue was a worm. Her lips tore off and stuck to mine. I screamed. I tried to pull away, but my body was already rotting from the inside. My hands turned to bone. My chest collapsed inward. My eyes burst like grapes, and I saw it all. Every soul she'd taken. Every man who said, "Kill me, marry." Every ceremony. Every vow. Every time someone shared the story. That's how she spreads. Not through code. Not through the dark web. Not even through the veil. Through attention. Through your eyes. You're here now. You've read all 5 parts. You didn't stop. You didn't look away. You brought her this far. Now ask yourself, did you see her yet? No. You will, because the wedding's not over. Not until you say it. I do. Whatever you do, don't go back and read it again. That's the real vow. And if you see a woman in white, just keep walking. Don't look, because once she sees you, she never stops.